The committee will come to order. Without objection, the gentleman from Louisiana, Garrett Graves, the gentleman from Louisiana, Troy Carter, the gentleman from Louisiana, Clay Higgins, and the gentlelady from Louisiana, Julia Letlow, are authorized to participate in the hearing and ask questions. Good afternoon. I want to welcome everybody to the hearing on how Social Security's windfall elimination, or WEP, and the government pension offset, GPO, affect the benefits of our public servants. Social Security is very important, we'll change the words, to a program for Ohioans, or for Americans' retired workers. Every hardworking American who contributes to Social Security deserves to know what they and their loved ones will receive, the benefits that they've earned. However, some workers, including millions of public servants, that's just not the case because Social Security benefit formula is in fact broken. Social Security covers about 96% of the jobs in America. But as many of those here today and those watching at home are aware, many government employees, frequently firefighters, law enforcement officers, educators, and other dedicated public servants contribute to public pension programs instead of participating in Social Security. Nonetheless, these same workers or their spouses may have had their other employment while they were contributing to Social Security. The WEP and the GPO were established in the 1980s and the 1970s to address a flaw in Social Security benefit formula that ignores wages that were earned while contributing to a substitute pension instead of contributing to Social Security. Both WEP and GPO are flawed formulas that treat public servants unfairly. While intended to prevent overly generous benefits, these policies sometimes undercorrect, but more often than not, overcorrect. They simply miss the mark. Further, these policies make it difficult for affected workers and their families to plan for retirement. Far too often, people are unaware that they are subject to the WEP or the GPO until their spouse retires. Some people return to work, others have to adjust their spending habits or have to reevaluate their standards of living. Even for those public servants who are aware of these policies, the complexities of these formulas makes it difficult to determine the Social Security benefits that they will eventually receive. Well, this is an issue that is especially pronounced here in Louisiana. It is not just Louisiana's problem. It affects more than 100,000 public servants, like those in my home state of Ohio, as well as those in Missouri, Illinois, Massachusetts, Texas, Virginia, California, and other states across the country. America's hardworking and dedicated public servants deserve relief from WEP and the GPO's unfair treatment. We are holding this subcommittee hearing at the St. George Fire Department in Baton Rouge to hear directly from Americans whose Social Security benefits are impacted by these policies. This is the first step in this committee's efforts to identify meaningful relief for our public servants. I want to thank the witnesses for being here, and I look forward to hearing their testimony. Now I'm pleased to recognize the distinguished chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Smith, for an opening statement.
Thank you. I first want to thank the St. George Fire Department for hosting the Ways and Means Committee and the Ways and Means Subcommittee here. I also want to thank Garrett Graves, the congressman in this district, for the invitation to be here and his advocacy on this subject. We're pleased to be. We would not be here if it wasn't for Mr. Graves, his advocacy in pushing us. The Ways and Means Committee is in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, for our 6th hearing outside of Washington, D.C., to hear directly from working families. I would note that this is the first subcommittee hearing that this committee has held outside of the halls of Congress in almost a decade. We are here today to listen to Americans who have been mistreated by flawed provisions within the Social Security program. These provisions have done a disservice to many who choose to work for their communities as firefighters, teachers, police officers, and other public servants. These are the men and women who protect our streets, teach our children, collect the trash, repair the power lines, pave the roads, and more. They work tirelessly to improve the lives of their neighbors and their communities. Like all working families, they deserve a secure retirement. Yet we are here in Louisiana because that retirement is far from secure. Social Security's windfall elimination provision and government pension offset have prevented millions of Americans from getting the Social Security benefits they deserve. And these policies will harm millions more. Unless Congress acts, while not likely known to most Americans, these two parts of the Social Security program have real consequences for public employees. It means seniors get smaller checks and could struggle to afford their food, medicine, and heat their homes. Decades ago, in an effort to keep Social Security from overpaying certain retirees, which would be unfair to other seniors, Washington stepped in and created new formulas and a new process. Unfortunately, those solutions have proven ill-equipped to solve the original problem. Seniors aren't only harmed by these unfair policies, they're often blindsided by them. Most state and local employees do not know that they'll get a smaller Social Security benefit until it's too late to adjust their plans. People spend decades working, saving, planning for retirement, and find out only at the point of retirement that things were not as they thought. And given the complexity of the entire system, trying to work with the Social Security Administration to determine what they are owed can be extremely difficult and frustrating. At the core of this issue is fairness. Congress must find a bipartisan way to provide public servants with their fair treatment that they deserve. Few people in Congress have been more determined to find a solution to this problem for seniors than Congressman Graves and the Louisiana delegation. Congressman Graves fights hard for the folks from Louisiana, and we are glad he's hosting us in his district today to discuss the critical issue. This hearing is the next step in this committee's efforts to provide help in retirement for public servants. I know this issue is important to the entire Louisiana delegation, and I want to keep working together to find that bipartisan solution. We are looking forward to hearing our witnesses share their stories as we learn more about how the windfall elimination provision and government pension offset has resulted in the unfair treatment of public servants and has hurt them and their families. The committee also wants to hear from everyone here today. If you are affected by the Social Security's unfair treatment of state and local workers, we want to hear from you. There will be notebooks passed out in the audience right there for everyone to share with us your concerns, your ideas, your solutions of how we can fix this problem. We will enter those into the official hearing record and take those back with us to Washington as we consider how to protect the retirement of state and local workers. I want to thank each and every witness for taking time away from your family and the retirement you have worked so hard to earn.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. At this time, I would also like to recognize our gracious host, Congressman Graves, for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just very quickly before I get started, I want to note the partnership that we have in this case. And everything we do, we must work together with our state delegation and with our local government officials as well. I know we have a number of our representatives from our Louisiana legislature here. Mind if you stand up and just want to give these folks a recognition they deserve for being incredible advocates and partners with us. Mr. Chairman, everything we do in lockstep with our legislature, with our local officials. Secondly, Mr. Chairman, look, he came in from Ohio. The full committee chairman came in from Missouri. Mr. Estes came in from Kansas. Clay came in from Lafayette. I seriously, I want to thank our entire Louisiana delegation. Everyone has been in lockstep on a bipartisan basis for this important legislation. I can't improve upon what the two chairs said. I just want to make note. This has been going on for far too long. This has been a problem for over 40 years. and we must fix it. We are the third most co-sponsored bill in the United States Congress, and it's because of the people at this witness table. It's because of the people in the audience. Now is the time to push the gas even harder. It is fantastic that we're here today, that we're having a legislative hearing. This is a huge milestone, but Mr. Chairman, we must continue working to actually solve this problem. Thanks again for being here. Yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Graves. I would like to now introduce our witnesses. Patrick Yose is a retired Louisiana law enforcement officer, and he's also currently the national president of the Fraternal Order of Police. Ann Dugas is a retired Louisiana state employee. Bernard Bernie Pyro is a retired Louisiana firefighter. And Paula Porter is a retired Louisiana educator. Thank you for joining us today. Now, as we spoke before, your written testament will be made part of the hearing record, and you are now each recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your remarks. Mr. Yose, we will begin with you when you are ready.
Well, thank you, and good morning, Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Carter, and distinguished members of this Ways and Means Committee. I want to thank you for having this hearing. My name is Patrick Yose, National President of Fraternal Order Police, and I represent 373,000 rank-and-file police officers. The Fraternal Order Police is the nation's largest and oldest law enforcement labor organization. Mr. Chairman, I'm grateful that you're holding this hearing to examine the impact of the windfall elimination provision and government pension offset on hardworking Americans who chose a career in public service. Approximately 1.9 million beneficiaries, or 4% of the eligible population, are impacted by windfall elimination. It is estimated, however, that 60% of all of America's law enforcement officers are affected by this provision. Between 2000 and 2008, the House and the Senate had a combined 7 hearings on windfall elimination and government pension offset. Apart from this committee's markup last year, which was done solely to block a vote after we reached 305 co-sponsors, there's been no action or consideration since 2008. So while I welcome the opportunity to be here today to talk about windfall elimination, government pension offset, and how it hurts this nation's retired law enforcement officers, I also am here to express our deep frustration of my members. Simply put, law enforcement officers who served in an agency outside of the Social Security system may lose up to 60% of their Social Security benefit, of which they're entitled by virtue of secondary or post-retirement employment. We were required to pay the same amount into the Social Security system as every other American, and yet we're not guaranteed the same benefits, all because we answered the call of public service. The Fraternal Order of Police contends that this provision has a disproportionate impact on law enforcement officers. An early study suggests that 75% of those impacted are law enforcement officers or other public safety employees. Law enforcement officers are likely to retire earlier than other public employees because of the extreme physical and mental demands of police work. After a full career in law enforcement, officers who will retire may begin a second career and pay into the Social Security system, and this creates an unjust situation for many of our members. We were entitled to the pensions that we earned and paid into our entire career, but we also worked into jobs that paid into Social Security and fully paid into that system as well, just like every other American. While GPO impacts fewer people, its effects sometimes can even be more profound. According to the Social Security Administration, of those directly affected by GPO, 52% were spouses, 48% were widows and widowers. An astonishing 70% of all affected by government pension offset had their benefits completely eliminated. That means that we paid into a system that won't go to our survivors, but it'll stay, like every other American, but it'll stay within a system to pay for someone else's benefits. Do we not see how outrageously unfair that is to public employees and their spouses? Additionally, the profession of law enforcement is facing an existential crisis in recruiting the next generation of law enforcement officers, and the very existence of windfall elimination provision and government pension offset discourages anyone from choosing a career in public service. When a prospective candidate learns that any Social Security credit or benefits that they have earned, even in the private sector, or will earn in the future, could be reduced, it makes the career of law enforcement a lot less attractive. For 40 years, Congress has avoided addressing the long-term viability of Social Security and used it as justification not to repeal the windfall elimination provision or government pension offset. Instead, Congress has knowingly embraced these unfair provisions by ignoring the victimization of the very people in our society who work so hard for fairness. Public employees did not create the destabilization of the Social Security system, yet we're the only class of employees that Congress is forcing to give up our earned benefits. How is it fair to make a public employee pay the same rate in the Social Security system as every other American and then legislate the same benefits away that are afforded to them? We're not asking for special treatment or anything more than we've already fairly earned. We're just simply asking for fair treatment. The windfall elimination provision in government pension offset is wrong, unfair, and frankly, it's dishonest. If this scheme was being run by a pension board or private money management group instead of the Social Security Administration, we wouldn't call it an elimination of windfall or an offset. We'd call it by the criminal statutes of which Congress has passed to protect hardworking Americans. One entity enriching itself by denying the benefits earned by an individual is criminal, and that's exactly what the windfall elimination provision in government pension offset does. Ultimately, this is about fairness for the men and women who have sworn to serve and protect our communities across America. And instead, we're treated like second-class citizens and subject to arbitrary formulas that reduce benefits for which we have been fully taxed and which we're entitled. Both provisions should be repealed immediately, and I encourage all of you to go back to Washington, please. Let's pass H.R. 82, the Social Security Fairness Act. Mr. Chairman, I'm honored to be here today. It's been 15 years in waiting for my members to be able to talk about something that has been so devastating to them. I get calls every single week of members trying to figure out how they're going to pay their bills, and they're not asking for handouts. They're just asking for what they earned. And I think this is a great first step. Let's fix this Social Security system. Let's fix this inequity. Let's take 40 years of treating public employees unfairly, and let's straighten the system out. I'm willing to work together with you to do that. I thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dumas, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman James. And members of the Congress that are represented here this afternoon. It is an honor to be here, and it is an opportunity to share the story that I've lived with for so many years, and hopefully something can be resolved regarding this unfair law. Presently, I am a retired government employee, and I receive Social Security survivor benefits before retirement under the government pension offset. My husband died on his way to work in a tragic automobile accident on December 15, 1980, at the age of 42 years old. He had worked for many years and contributed to Social Security for many of his years of employment. His death left me to be a widow at the age of 34 with 2 daughters, ages 10 and 5, to rear as a single mother. His death has been tremendously shocking for my family and has left an impact on our life. Following his death, I did resign from my employment of several years at Dow Chemical in Plaquemine, Louisiana, as a stenographer in order to devote my full attention to the care of my daughters. In October 1996, I was offered employment with the Louisiana Attorney General's office as a receptionist. After working a short while as a receptionist, I decided to enroll in the LSU Paralegal Studies program, seeking certification as paralegal. In June 2000, I received my paralegal certification from LSU. The Louisiana Attorney General's office then hired me as paralegal, and I was employed there until the date of my retirement, May 3rd of this year, 2023. Until my retirement, I had been receiving Social Security survivor benefits in the amount of $1,698 after taxes were taken out, along with my annual earned income of approximately $50,000. These combined incomes enabled me to live with independence and a sense of security. After retirement, the Social Security survivor benefit has been completely eliminated, and my monthly retirement income from the state is $2,589. I have earned my necessary quarters with Social Security to receive benefits. However, this benefit will be reduced by the windfall elimination provision. With certainty, I cannot say that the impact of the government pension offset and the windfall elimination provision was told to me at the time that I was employed. I feel that it would have been quite beneficial to have known the drastic impact that these provisions would have on my retirement when I was hired. Quite a while after I was employed, I do remember discussions between employees in our office of these provisions and the impact of the consequences that these provisions would make upon retirement. One employee that I distinctly remember had worked for many years as an attorney in the private sector, and he would often discuss the impact of the windfall elimination provision on his retirement. And this employee worked full-time until the age of 72 and then was employed part-time until his recent death. The decision to retire was not an easy one for me to make. Approaching the age of 77 with 25 years of employment with the state, I faced the reality that I would not be able to work much longer, and I felt that I needed to begin to look into my options for retirement. Financially, without the Social Security benefit that I was receiving, it was not wise for me to make this decision, so I had to consider other options. And one option that I'm considering is a part-time job. But in order to retire, I came to the realization that living in the home that I currently own was not going to be an option. In order to retire, I felt that I had to downsize my home and find a smaller one that was easier to maintain and provided me with fewer expenses. Fortunately, I was able to sell my larger home. It had close to 2,500 square feet of living area, and I purchased a smaller home with about 2,000 square feet of living area, and it's much more practical for me. In closing, I humbly ask that you please repeal the government pension offset and windfall elimination provision. The importance of this to our future is overwhelming. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pyro, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to serve on this panel, as well as all the congressmen and congresswomen up here on the stage. My name is Bernie Pyro. I am a retired firefighter, and I spell my last name with an I, so I put them out. I do not spell it with a Y, just to clarify that. I would like to voice my concerns and the hardship of how the windfall elimination provision in the government pension offset, also known as WEP and GPO, affects myself and my wife, as well as many state, municipality, and parish eligible retirees and their spouses concerning a government pension. I retired as a Shreveport firefighter at the age of 59 years of age, just shy of 35 years of service. I personally chose to take the option to leave my wife retirement at the time of my death. This option cost me $835.83 each and every month, and during the drop period, that ended up totaling $30,089.88. As of December of 23, the total cost in each month, it increases by $835.83 for me to choose that option to leave her my pension. We're currently up to $112,837.05. And of course, we'll increase each and every month until my death. I have not applied for Social Security benefits as I recently met my full retirement age. My Social Security benefits, I found out, will be cut approximately 60% of what the earnings that I provided working prior to the fire department and also my second jobs. Many of you know that public servant jobs are not the highest paying jobs, but it's a calling that many of us feel. So therefore, we have to have part-time jobs to supplement our income. Also, because of the lower pay, your retirement can be much lower than what it would be maybe working for a corporation or something with a retirement at a higher rate of salary. To make matters worse, the government pension offset affects the spouse, reducing their Social Security benefits. Like I said, if you choose to take the option on your government pension to leave your spouse, you accept a reduction on monthly pension benefits. And in my case, that was an $835.83 reduction in a retirement check each and every month. In my wife's case, working since age 17 and contributing to her Social Security and plans on working to the age of 70, but according to the GPO calculator that I recently went to online on the Social Security website, she will receive zero in Social Security benefits after working all those years since age 17 through age 70 because I left her my pension benefit. According to the Social Security publication number 5-10700 stating a current or former spouse, widow, or widower, the GPO may reduce or eliminate your Social Security benefit altogether. And in the case of my wife, it did so. If the GPO applies, your Social Security benefits will be reduced by an amount equal to 2/3 of your government pension and could be reduced to zero. And again, that was the publication number 5-10700. I thought I was being a reliable husband, taking care of my wife, only to find out GPO is eliminating her Social Security benefits that she worked hard her whole life to receive. I'm a cancer patient with a dreary prognosis, so I'm concerned about the finances for my wife once I'm gone. I think all retirees that receive a state, municipality, and parish government retirement has been betrayed. And I appreciate that this group of the Ways and Means Committee is looking at this, and there's been introduction to try to correct this injustice. This injustice must be corrected now. It hurts many of us in being able to provide for our families and grandchildren that, as a grandparent, you want to be able to do things for your grandchildren. And with my wife's salary, when she retires would be cut, and now she's going to get zero for her Social Security benefits. And this is going to be an extreme hardship trying to live on my retirement to provide for her and my family and grandkids. I want to thank all of you for your service and your attendance today and appreciate your concerns and allowing us to address y'all. I very much appreciate y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Porter, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
I, too, offer my thanks very sincerely. My name is Paula Porter. I am a retired school teacher from Terrebonne Parish. I taught 38 years. All but 4 of those years were in Terrebonne Parish. My husband died from cancer at the age of 61. He had contributed into Social Security as a teenager. His mom and dad had a mom-and-pop drugstore. He never collected $1 of his Social Security. I was 42 years old when he died. I had 5 children, ages 10 through 15. Teaching school at the time, I immediately started finding second jobs in the school system. I worked homework hotline, Saturday school, LEP remediation, all the programs just about that they offered after school. I had 26 years at the age of 56, and I was eligible to retire. And I thought I would go on and retire and work some little odd second jobs. But that did not work out for me, and I had 5 children. I had tried to send them to college. They did go to college. I found that I needed to return back to the classroom, and I immediately did return back to the classroom. I worked another 12 years, continuing to work some after-school jobs. I finally retired from the classroom at the age of 68 with 38 years. There are a lot of things that come up out of the budget. Cars, new cars are needed. The house insurance in South Louisiana is through the ceiling, as many of you know. And there's just so many extra expenses. So I worked some more. I did testing for the ability to benefit testing program, which they no longer do, but I worked with them until it ended. And I worked in an education shop until the owner closed the business down. By that time, I was almost 75 years old. I did not look for another job. I'm 80 years old now. I feel like it was very unfair because I chose to teach school that I am denied my husband's benefits. It would have made life much easier. I had no family. I had family, but none close. So I had the problem of working, teaching, doing lesson plans, caring for the family, the children, whatever household problems came up, they were mine. And I can assure you some extra money would have really come up. I am fortunate my health held up, and I am grateful for that. And I also think my being here today, hopefully that this is going to be corrected. There are many people like me that have similar circumstances, as we've all pointed out today. And also, I think the people to come after us, many people are going to not consider going into fields like teaching, firefighting, law enforcement, all these state jobs, and all these people that will be denied benefits. I thank you for giving me this opportunity.
I want to thank all of you for your excellent testimony, but also just the true life stories that you're telling to all of us here today. We're now going to proceed to the question and answer period. I'm going to begin by recognizing myself. As I noted in my opening statement, the WEP and the GOP affect Social Security benefits of public servants across the country, which includes, as we talked about, my state of Ohio. I frequently hear from the constituents who are surprised to learn that their or their spouse's benefits, just like you said, Mrs. Poore, would be reduced by these policies or never received. As a result, they had to alter their retirement plans, as you said, reevaluate their financial futures, Mr. Pyro, as you said. My question is going to be for all the witnesses. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Yost. When you found out, it's going to be the same question for all of you, and if you could keep your answer brief, that way we have time to get to all the other people here. When you found out just how much of the WEP or the GPO would affect you and your family, how did you respond? First, is the first part of the question, did your retirement planning change, or your members' retirement planning change? Were you forced to adjust your spending habits or your members' spending habits, rethink or delay your retirement, or question your standard of living? If you could just start from a generality from your members' perspective.
Gary, thank you. Thank you for the question. Full disclosure, I have not started collecting Social Security. I know that I will be impacted by it when I do. However, I can speak on behalf of my members. I can tell you that there's not a day goes by, or at least 5-6 times a week, that I don't get a phone call from one of our members struggling, trying to figure out how they're going to pay their bills and trying to reconcile how the inequities of these provisions and wanting to know when we're going to fix it. So all I can do is speak in generalities of my members that feel that they've been betrayed simply because they chose a profession of a public service and looking for some type of relief. And I'm grateful for being here today that maybe we can move in that direction.
Thank you. Mr. Goss?
Yes, sir. I did find out. I visited the retirement office for the state, and that's when, they told me that they could give me an estimate of my retirement benefit, but then I would need to go to Social Security. So the day that I went to the retirement office, had quite a bit of time, so I went to the Social Security office also, and I was given an estimate of how, this would affect my Social Security. And at that time, when I was told that it would more than likely be completely eliminated, that's when I made the decision, I'm just not going to retire. And so, I kept that mindset for quite a while. And then, this year, I determined I couldn't continue to work. I was really, the years were catching up with me. And so I decided to retire. And it was disappointing when I found out, about the benefit being eliminated, and somewhat angry also, because I felt this was, this benefit had been earned by my late husband.
I want to thank you for that. Mr. Pryor, I know you touched upon a lot of this in your testimony, but if you could just really, just reevaluate, if you could speak to how you're reevaluating, I know you're a cancer survivor, and congratulations on that, how this has affected as you plan in the future for your family.
First of all, I wish I had been more aware, it had been made aware to me concerning the windfall elimination and exactly how much was going to be cut. Many years ago, I would hear from some of the older firefighters that some of the younger generation was going to be cut due to the windfall elimination tax. I don't recall anything being discussed about the government pension offset during that time frame. Many of the older firefighters were exempt from that strictly because they were already vested in the retirement plan. There was a provision for that. But the generations that came to work in the early 70s, we're not exempt anyone that came into effect at that point. It's been a tremendous hardship. We have adjusted our spending already, trying to prepare, prepare for this. Things that we have terminated, such as internet at the house. My children are grown. We live in a rural area and had satellite internet, and we were paying a premium price and so forth. That was considered a luxury. We've done away with our landline and use cell phones for our service. So we're constantly trying to make cuts is to prepare for this, but I just don't know that we can prepare for the government pension offset that I was unaware of until recently when my wife started talking about retiring at age 70 and started doing some research on both the windfall elimination tax and, of course, in doing so, the government pension offset pops up along with it. And didn't realize the extent of what it was going to cover until I did the research on it. And my wife, and her and employers to date, according to the publication on the Social Security website, has contributed $175,866 into Social Security, and she's got 2.5 more years that she plans on working due to a commitment to her employer. And with the amount that I paid to leave her my pension, currently at the $112,837.05, which will increase on a monthly basis, I mean, this continues to grow until our deaths. And I just would like someone to try to explain to me how this is fair to contribute. When you go to a store and you pay them money, you walk out with products that you purchased. In this case, you paid into Social Security, and she's going to get zero. And that was at the tune of $175,866 to date. And she's got 2.5 more years to work, going to contribute to the Social Security system. This is not fair, and if anybody can explain to me how it's fair, I'd like to hear how they do that. But many of us are suffering. She's taken a reduced income when she does retire from what she would draw from Social Security, and to find out that she's going to receive zero is devastating to both her and myself. And I just would appreciate all of y'all. I do appreciate every one of you being here, and hope that this can, for once, be corrected.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Porter, I know you pretty much outlined everything that I was asking in this question. I guess maybe you could just talk. You said you had 5 kids when your husband passed away, and the youngest was how old? 10 at the time? 10 to 15. And so can you just talk about the fact that you were not able to receive and how that affected them as they reached college age?
Well, they all got jobs when they got old enough. I never could give them spending money. If they spent anything, it was what they earned. And but did Pell Grant, some Pell Grant help, but it did not completely cover everything. And that was one of my main motivations to continue working, because Social Security, of course, stopped when they got 18. Those years really became, in some ways, even harder to try to keep them in school, even though, like I said, they did work for spending money, but they couldn't pay for everything. So, I mean, we lived a simple life. I still live a simple life. I don't travel. I don't go to movies. My entertainment is the television, which I like. But you lead just a very, very simple life. And I found out about the Social Security the first time I retired, thinking, as I told you, that I was going to do some odd jobs. And I went back, one of my children had some financial problems that I was trying to help with. And when I went back, I thought I'd go back a year or two. And one of the other teachers whose husband had died, she said, Paula, you know, you're not going to be able to collect your husband's Social Security. So instead of working 1 or 2 years, I worked 12. And then I found the part-time jobs after I retired, which I wouldn't have had to do if I had his.
Well, thank you. I want to thank you. Now I'd like to recognize Chairman Smith for any questions he may have.
Thank you. I want to thank each and every one of the witnesses for your testimony. Ms. Porter, I am sure that you were an amazing teacher for how long you've taught, but I would have thought you were 29. I really appreciate your testimony. It's extremely moving and exactly what we need to hear. As I mentioned in my opening statement, this challenge facing our community of retired public servants is an issue that is often unknown until one retires and can be equally challenging to address after the fact. Several of you have made notes of when you found out about these two provisions. On that point, I'd like to give each of you the opportunity to just answer a few questions. And my first question is, when did you learn about these two provisions within the Social Security benefits program and the impact that they had on your retirement? Mr. Yos?
Well, I think I'm probably like most people that find themselves in this situation, that when these provisions were enacted, there was a grandfather clause for people that were affected. So those that were immediately affected didn't see the concern with it. I think those that are in my category just didn't quite grasp what we were looking at and the impact that it would eventually have on me. So it wasn't until later on in my career I realized that that windfall elimination government pension offset was going to be something that was going to drastically impact, my retirement. And
do you know about how long into your career?
It wasn't until the last part of my career. I did 36 years, so I would say that I probably became more aware of it only because of my position in the Fraternal Order of Police, because I was hearing from so many members. And it took me, a little self-reflection of how it was going to affect me as well. And I think most of us had the disbelief that government would not do that to us. Government protects us. The whole system was built on fairness, and there's nothing fair about this at all.
So, Ms. Dugas, when did you learn about these provisions?
I learned about the provisions after I was employed. It was mostly word of mouth, people in the office speaking about it. As I mentioned in my testimony, one of the attorneys in our office was affected by windfall, and he really educated us on it. And my opinion at the time was, well, it's, can't be that harsh. But then later I found out exactly how harsh it is. Yes.
Mr. Pyra.
Yes. I can't recall exactly when. I know I'm much like Patrick. Until you get closer to the retirement age, I've been retired. I retired at the age of 59 and received my retirement. And because I was not eligible for Social Security, I did not immediately look into it. I'd made my mind up that I was not going to retire and draw Social Security at 62. And for me, I believe it was for full retirement age, it was 66 years and 4 months. And so that was my goal. And the closer you get to that time frame is when you start looking and wanting to see, well, I wonder how much I will receive. What is, this windfall elimination? What is the penalty? Here recently, me and my wife discussed, and like I said, she will be retiring at age 70, and that was an agreement with her and her boss. She still enjoys working. So she said, I want to see what my Social Security is going to be when I retire, because that's going to be a reduction from me being in the workforce. And so at that point, we started looking into it, and of course, she and I had already looked into the fact that when you put off retiring with Social Security benefits, you benefit 8% a year increase. And so between her and her boss, they came up with an agreement that he will probably be retiring when she is 70 years of age, and that was the agreement that they had reached. So here recently in preparing for this, and I wanted to see, and I found on the website, Social Security website, a GPO calculator. And so I put in what my benefit is and what she would be able to draw if she was to retire from Social Security, and hit the calculate mark, and it comes up 0. She would be eligible for 0 Social Security benefits when she starts drawing my pension. And I just do not in any way seem like this is a fair and equitable especially after the amount of money that has been put into Social Security on her behalf from employers and herself. For the life of me, I can't understand the reasoning. I don't understand how it passed to begin with, but I appreciate each and every one of y'all that are trying to correct this wrong, because this is an injustice and hurting many, many of the public servant retirement. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Porter, when did you learn of these two provisions?
Actually learned from a teacher who was a widow, and she mentioned it to me. I had gone back in, thought I would work a couple more years, and when she told me of that. But it was from another teacher whose husband had died, and when she went to check on it. And I thought she didn't know what she was talking about. I went to the Social Security office and found out there was no calculating. I knew, they just told me it was going to be a big, I couldn't draw anything.
So you went to the Social Security office to get better understanding?
Well, to verify, because sometimes people tell you things and it's not just right. But
yeah,
this was
I kind of know that. I serve in Congress, so that's yes. Did any of the rest of you contact the Social Security office to try to get more information on the policies whenever you heard it? I'm just curious if Social Security was at all helpful. All right.
If I may.
I think that answers. Oh, go ahead.
Yes. I would like to talk on behalf, when I got this information, and I have one of my retirees that we were discussing it, and I knew that he had gone to work many years prior to me, and he's drawing his Social Security benefit, and he was telling me that it was cut 2/3 because of the windfall elimination provision. And I told him, I said, I think you are exempt. And so he did go to the Social Security office in his first visit, and she said, we're waiting on the outcome from Congress. And I don't believe that she understands that he was exempt because he was eligible for retirement at the time he retired. And he has been retired over 10 years, and he's been taking a cut in his Social Security benefits when he was actually exempted. So I don't know that, and I'm sure he's not the only one that this has happened to. We actually, he had talked to another firefighter, and initially he was also given that information, but they did contact him a week or so later and say, no, you are correct, you are exempt. So there's a lot that needs to be corrected.
Thank you, Chairman Carey.
I now recognize Mr. Estes for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate having this field hearing outside of Washington, D.C. It's refreshing for our committee to hold field hearings away from the nation's capital so that we can hear directly from Americans that are impacted by our policy decisions or policy decisions that were made years ago. And I want to thank again the St. George Fire Department for allowing us to meet here today. And also, I want to thank all of you witnesses. I'm grateful for having such incredible public servants here to talk about the issues that affect them in their daily lives. I'll try to keep my remarks brief because I want to allow time for questions. And our discussion here is really to talk about the large, unwieldy D.C. bureaucracies that far too often don't help people with the intended help that they're supposed to have. And for me, far too often, Mary and John at the Social Security Administration prioritize making it easier for them to pass paper between their cubicles instead of focusing on how to help the teachers and firefighters and police officers prepare for retirement. The complexity of the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset and the lack of clear communication early in the careers of public servants means there's many Kansans and Americans who are unprepared for the lower Social Security payment when they retire. Mr. Pyro, I've visited a number of firehouses and spoken with firefighters in my district. I know that before you enter a fire scene, you have the tools and the training and the preparation needed. You wouldn't know all the specific challenges you face, but you're prepared to address whatever you come against. I think of retirement in the same way. We don't know what challenges we'll face, how long we'll live, what our health conditions will be, how we'll spend our time no longer working. But we do know that we want to spend, that during our working years, we spend time to prepare for our retirement. Do you feel the Social Security Administration provided you with the tools to be prepared for retiring regarding WEP and GPO?
No, sir, I don't. I don't feel like we were informed, and they shouldn't. They need to share that responsibility with the retirement system as well as the employer, the fire department, school boards, state agencies, law enforcement. If you're not made aware of this, the impact, it can be detriment on how you select your retirement and what benefits you're going to leave your spouse. Being better prepared for it. Had you known, and had my health been good enough, it would have been quite a bit better for me to take out a large life insurance policy and have kept the $835.83 and paid for the policy with it, and she would not be penalized because she received a life insurance policy versus a retirement pension. And had that been expressed better to me, that would have been an option had my health, if my health allowed it at that time, and I was not diagnosed with cancer at the time of my retirement, then that would have been a much better option for me and would have better protected my wife had I known about it. Right. And I think those three components that they dropped the ball.
Right, right.
Yes,
well, thank you.
I appreciate you.
Thank you. Ms. Porter, I mean, there's a special place in my heart for teachers. My wife taught for several years. Several of my staff members, both in D.C. and in Kansas, either are former teachers or married to teachers. I know that being a teacher is not another job, it's a calling. And you probably didn't join the profession for the paycheck, but because you wanted to help inspire young minds. Did you know about WEP and GPO when you first looked at being a teacher? And how did it change your outlook on choice of your career as a teacher?
I did not know, but I'm not sure the exact year that went into effect in the 80s. So when I started teaching, because I stayed out about 5 years, I had 5 children in 5 years, so I stayed out after the 5th one for a while. But at the time I went into teaching, that law was not into effect. It was not in effect. Some of the older teachers may have been able to draw both. But as I said before, when I found out about it, I just stayed back in the classroom longer. And I found out through a fellow teacher, no one ever had mentioned that at school before. And I think to this day, there's still a lot of people that do not know about that. Another thing I think we're facing, and I'm just speaking from the teaching standpoint, Louisiana is severely short of teachers now. Now, once they find out more about this and more aware, we're going to even have fewer of them going in, or we're going to have some of them that are going to leave and go somewhere else.
That's right. And we always have a shortage of
yes.
teachers and firefighters and law enforcement.
Yes.
You know, Mr. Chairman, I know so many laws that come out of Washington, you know, WEP and GPO were designed to solve a problem. Unfortunately, it's made it tougher in a lot of cases, and we need to make sure that we focus on policies that help make it better beneficial for American citizens. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize Mr. Graves for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I want to thank you all for holding this hearing, and I think Mr. Estes said something that was really important just in regard to the committee wanting to go out to real America and spending time with real people, not stuck in this bubble of Washington. And this is a real penalty that's affecting real people all across this country. Mr. Yost touched on, I think, a really important component of what it is that we're facing right now. You have all heard of the awful activities of people like Bernie Madoff and one of the awful investor groups here in Louisiana that impacted so many folks, the Stanford Group. They charged people money or took money under the auspices of doing something and then diverted it to another cause. In the real world, that's called embezzling, and people go to jail for it. And in this case, it appears that Congress is calling it budgeting and acting like it's okay. I I understand the intention of Congress in the late 70s and early 80s when they were trying to help to right-size this, I guess. But let's be clear, they got it wrong. They got it wrong. I understand, and all of us up here, Republicans and Democrats, everyone wants to ensure the sustainability of the Social Security Trust Fund so it's there for generations to come. And I understand that anything that you do that causes faster expenditures, causes that insolvency rate, or causes the Social Security Trust Fund to go in the red faster, I get it. But I want to come back to the point. Mr. Yos, you joined the St. Charles Parish Sheriff's Office to ensure justice, to ensure that people were being held accountable for doing what's right, doing what's wrong, I guess held accountable for doing what's wrong. In this case, watching your own government step in and charge fees, and I think of Ms. Porter, your husband, didn't paid for decades and didn't receive a penny. How does that make you feel that your own government is doing this?
Well, first, Mr. Graves, thank you. You are a strong advocate, work very closely with your office, and thank you for the work that you do for windfall elimination government pension offset. You give us hope. So thank you, and the entire committee. I think when you look at this, I don't envy the position that all of you are in. You have a very difficult position of trying to find a system and keep it solvent. I understand that. That is a challenge. I can somewhat understand how you could argue saying, okay, if you're already receiving a government pension, then somehow you're going to get a second government pension and you're going to have a windfall. But let's just look at the reality of it. We paid for our pension. We paid into it. Just like someone in the private sector would pay into their 401k or any other retirement plan they do. What I don't understand is why it's taken 40 years to recognize that, yes, they did get it wrong. Maybe it was trying to find a way to shore up a system, but at some point, when did we recognize that what we're doing is an injustice to the very people who are working in public safety or public employees, but we're not doing anything to fix it? And we've got an opportunity now to do it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yos, and an important point. So for over 40 years, people have been charged, so folks that are worried about the insolvency of the trust fund, these people have been charged a fee or a tax that has actually helped to prop up the Social Security Trust Fund. And so now when folks are asking for that payment,
so
I think that you have more than made your appropriate payment. But Ms. Porter, let me ask you a question. 38 years you taught. I'm married to a teacher, and I think one of the most important professions, I want to make note, my wife would not be affected by this legislation, but one of the most important professions, thinking about our investment in the next generation. Knowing what you know now, would you have become a teacher?
So, especially if I had known what my future held. When my husband died, I remember my daddy saying, if we had only known, I would have encouraged. I was very fortunate. My father paid for me to go to college. I didn't have to work my way through college. But he said we should have found something else. I don't think so.
Mr. Chairman, some of the most important professions in our community, teachers, firefighters, police officers, public employees, some of the most important professions. We're doing everything I can in Congress to incentivize people to take up these professions, yet all we're doing is shooting ourselves in the foot. Again, I want to thank all of our delegation members that have been early and strong supporters of this legislation. I want to thank the committee again for coming down to Louisiana, and I want to thank the chief in St. George for hosting us today. We want to take these trucks back to D.C. if that works, so yield back.
Thank you. I'd now like to recognize Mr. Carter for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and thank you to my colleagues here in Louisiana, and for demonstrating the ability to face the music and face it in a way that we recognize that to fix this issue that affects everyone in your position, that a bipartisan solution is the answer. And so I applaud the chairman for being here, applaud those members that have traveled from their homes, particularly during this holiday time, to be with us here in Louisiana. Thank you all so very much for coming today and highlighting this important issue. I'd like to also give a special thank you to Mr. Yos, Ms. Dugas, Mr. Pyro, and Ms. Porter for sharing your personal stories. Your testimony has demonstrated the fundamental unfairness of the windfall elimination provision in the government prevention offset. For far too long, people who serve our communities, police officers, teachers, firefighters, and so many others have suffered under these provisions and attempt to retire after public service, providing the resources and time away from your families, challenging to give your value and to be undervalued as significant public servants. We are here for you. We hear you loud and clear. And as the chairman and every member that has spoken thus far has said, we are going to work tirelessly to correct this massive, massive error, one that has devalued the great work that you've done for our country. Imagine, after a lifetime of serving your community, someone who has lost their spouse retires only to find that they will not be entitled to their Social Security survivors' benefits. Seniors often lose their homes and are forced to move into jobs to make ends meet. The stories that you've all said, the stories that resonate. Ms. Porter, I listened to your story, and it's almost brought me to tears because it's so unique to my own personal story. My mother raised 6 children on a school teacher salary. After 45-plus years in the classroom as a teacher, she too found herself having to take second jobs to tutor and to work with students to make ends meet. I'm the youngest of 6. My mother raised us all and made sure that we all had good educations, but it was very difficult. So I applaud you for your incredible work, your tenacity. You are a shining example of a public servant and a mother. So thank you. Mr. Yo, your officers put their lives on the line to protect our communities. How does it affect them knowing that if the worst happens, their spouse will not receive survivor benefits?
Well, I think it is a little bit of a slap in the face to recognize that any other class of employees, any other American would be entitled to those benefits. But these are eliminated because of the public pension. I do think it's ironic, and I think most of our members do, that we are actually recognizing our contribution into a pension system and considering it a windfall, but not recognizing our contribution into the Social Security system. Somehow that's not a win. You know, that's viewed different. So we earn both of these benefits, but they're being taken from us. So I think most of our members are looking at this as an inequity that just that as something that probably did not hit their radar, because when they first got into this profession, Social Security was something that was so far down the road that they didn't know how it was going to impact them. It is not until it's time for you to start making plans for retirement that you realize that the gate's been open. Thank you.
Mr. Pyro, after 35 years of protecting our community, how does this impact your recruitment and opportunity, the ability to recruit and retain future firefighters?
I think it's going to hamper the ability to recruit young firefighters. The pay is not the most optimum pay in the fire service, in the starting fire service, especially in Louisiana. And our recruitment tools and the number of people that are applying to take the civil service examination has drastically been reduced. Between the low pay and then adding the fact once the word has gotten out about the windfall elimination and the GPO, because all firefighters have second jobs. They're carpenters, electricians, they do work on the side. And that's to make ends meet, and of course they're paying into Social Security. And then to not be able to draw but a fraction of their Social Security, and if they leave their pension, their spouse could end up losing all of her Social Security or his, depending. We have female firefighters, so we can't leave them out. And I think it's going to hamper the situation and be detrimental to all the citizens.
Thank you very much. And my time is over. Can I just ask very, very briefly? My time has elapsed, but I want to make another comment as I did to Ms. Porter. Ms. Dugas, my mother, similar to your situation and Ms. Porter's, my mother went back to school as you did, recognizing that she needed to earn more. So she went back and got a master's degree in order to get a few more dollars as a school teacher. So I applaud both of you, all of you, as great examples of civil servants and public servants who've done the right thing. And to all of you in the audience, know that we hear you, we care, and we're going to continue to work in making it better. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize Mr. Higgins for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the fact that my colleagues have waved me on to this committee field hearing. This is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. Mr. Yos, Ms. Dugas, Mr. Pyro, Ms. Porter. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to fix this travesty. We're going to fix it in this Congress. And it's going to be because of colleagues like it seated next to me at this table. We're dedicated to fixing this. It's wrong. And we're going to address that quite aggressively in this Congress. So my colleagues up here and I, we're tired of hearing about excuses from previous Congress. We're tired of politics. We're tired of hearing about how much this is going to cost. Because here's a real simple fact, Mr. Chairman. I don't care how much it costs. It's not our money. This money belongs to the people that have earned it. It's been set aside for their entire life. They deserve every penny of it. And I am, Mr. Chairman, I am just so uplifted that we are here, because this is a signal that you gentlemen are getting this thing done, and you will have my full support and passionate support to get the Social Security Fairness Act passed and signed into law in the 118th Congress. That's going to happen. I'd like to mention the St. George Fire Department. I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but this is the nicest fire department I've ever seen. This is definitely a different neighborhood from where I grew up. I believe my first cousin, Boyd Petty, is here. Boyd, if you're here, raise your hand in the back. Yeah, there he is there. My first cousin, Boyd Petty, retired firefighter. Literally my first cousin, so he has stories about me that he's not allowed to tell. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Pyro asked, how is it fair? It's not fair. It's absolutely not fair. And if a law in our beautiful nation is ultimately, even a well-intentioned law, is determined to be unrighteous, if by any reasonable measure it becomes clear that a federal law is injurious to the citizenry that it's intended to serve, if it falls outside the parameters of any measure of what is right, you don't change the definition of righteousness. You don't eliminate the rights of the citizenry. You eliminate the law. And that's what we're going to do. And it couldn't happen soon enough to me, but I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, this is a significant hearing. You're witnessing history, because we're going to get this thing done. We've got 300 co-sponsors or so. We're pushing it very hard in this Congress. Mr. Yos and Mr. Pyro, we've had trouble in first responding for recruitment. Like, our backgrounds becomes increasingly difficult to fill the ranks. If this Congress will pass the Social Security Fairness Act and repeal WEP and GPO, Mr. Yos, Mr. Pyro, how do you think that will positively impact recruitment for first responding departments across the country? Mr. Yos?
Well, I think if you look at people that are, and traditionally we are struggling trying to recruit the next wave of law enforcement, not at a level that we can sustain the numbers that are leaving. So we're in an existential crisis right now. One of the problems that we have is I think we need to look at a little different in our recruiting. But unfortunately, with windfall elimination, government pension offset, what we don't have is a pool of people who are already in the workforce that would be willing to give up a benefit in order to come in to a field of public safety.
That's a good point. So to leave their career and shift their career, if we do not pass the Social Security Fairness Act, Very true. So we don't want to lose, some of our top guys out there. The most experienced men and women are the ones that have the greatest options, ladies and gentlemen, to leave that career in law enforcement or firefighting or teaching. Mr. Pyro, do you feel the same way?
Yes, sir, I do. I feel like although there's a certain passion to be in law enforcement or firefighting, to do that, the bottom line is you've got to be able to provide for your family. And when there are obstacles such as the windfall elimination and the GPO, because both law enforcement and firefighters all have second jobs. And I think this is deterring recruiting into both law enforcement and firefighting when they know that all their work on the side and they pay into Social Security, they're not going to reap a benefit as well as their spouse.
So I concur, Mr. Chairman. My time has expired, but let me just state that I'm so encouraged by the direction this Congress is taking from a bipartisan perspective to push forward, quite righteously, the Social Security Fairness Act to eliminate WEP and GPO. And I feel blessed to be a small part of that for the citizenry that we've sworn to serve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to be here today, and I yield.
Thank you. I now recognize Ms. Sletlow for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Chairman Smith for coming to the best state in the country. We are excited to have you here, but seriously to hear from the hearts and minds of all of the people that are adversely affected by this terrible provision. And thank you to Congressman Garrett Graves for leading H.R. 82. We are encouraged that we're going to get that across the finish line this Congress. And I have to tell you, while my time in Congress has been brief, a little over 3 years now, this is the #1 concern that I hear from my constituents about. Thousands of calls, countless letters. I was just followed around every single aisle of Target last week trying to buy presents, listening to the concerns from my constituents, because it is absolutely unfair and it must be righted. And I just want to thank our witnesses today. I want to especially thank Ms. Dugas and Ms. Porter. Unfortunately, I have also felt your pain in also being a widow myself. And I know that the minute that you lose your husband, the first thing that goes through your mind is, how am I going to support my family? And the last thing that you need to be worried about through every single point in the rest of your careers is, how am I going to support my family? And then to be hit with GPO later on is absolutely abhorrent. And I'm sorry that you had to go through that. And so being in Congress and being a teacher myself, once I realized what was happening with WEP and GPO, I wanted to go on this research hunt, per se, and find out, what is this? Why is it happening? Who can explain it to me? And so I probably did what many of you did. I went to the Social Security Administration and I said, can you explain what this funding formula is? What's happening here? Tell me more about it. I left more confused than when I went into that office. And then so I went to the Congressional Research Service and I said, hey, can you guys explain to me what's happening with this and what's happening with the funding formula? And they said, well, all we can tell you is that it's flawed. And I said, okay, it's flawed, so how do we fix it? And they said, oh, no, that's your job to fix it. I said, okay, so how do we fix it? So I want you to know that with every single breath that I have, this is the #1 issue that I want to work on in Congress. It is the #1 issue I hear about from my constituents. It's the #1 issue I'm trying to wrap my head around and fully understand, which leads me to my next question to the witnesses. Can any of you explain to me the funding formula and what is wrong with it? Anyone want to take a stab at it? I'm confused too, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying earnestly, in all seriousness, to find out what is the answer to that question, because no one can really explain it to me. And I think that's where we have to drill down and really get to the heart of the matter. Where is it wrong? Do you want to take a stab at it?
I cannot tell you I understand the formula. I can't tell you there's any logic to it. What I can tell you is how we can fix it.
Okay.
We know that it's broken.
Right.
We know that we're taking money from people with an expectation they're going to receive a benefit just like every other American.
Right.
We know that it's flawed, but we're not taking any steps to correct it. The simple thing to do is just repeal it. Let's give everybody what they paid into the system. It's not a matter of where does the money come from. I can tell you exactly where it came from. It came out of every one of our paychecks. We paid into the system just like every other American.
That's right.
And because we picked public service, we should be treated like every other American as well.
Absolutely. You know, it's incredibly frustrating for me to, again, in 3 years, watch trillions of dollars go out the door in other government programs, and yet what message are we saying to the hard-working American people who are public servants, who didn't go into teaching for 38 years for the money or for the paycheck? It's because you felt called to serve. What are we saying to those people when we are robbing them of what is rightfully theirs, what you paid in, Mr. Pyro? It's astounding to me that we're having this conversation, but I'm hopeful. I truly am hopeful that we have a chairman who's willing to come all the way to the great state of Louisiana to hear your voices and hear your stories. And again, as long as I have breath, I'm going to continue sharing them. Please continue sharing them with me, because the louder we can make our voices, I know change can occur. So thank you all so much for being with us today. I truly value your time and your stories. Thank you.
I would like to thank all of our witnesses for appearing before us today and sharing your very personal stories. I'd also like to recognize Mrs. Reba Brock Harrington, who was unable to be with us today, but who was a great help in pulling this hearing together. As the chairman mentioned earlier today, that this is the first time this subcommittee has met in a field hearing status in over 10 years. And with that, I'd also like to thank all of our staff, our committee staff that are present in the room. If you would raise your hands, some of them may be in the back getting everything else ready. But we do appreciate all their efforts in getting this done. Please be advised that the members have 2 weeks to submit written questions to be answered later in writing. Those questions and your answers will be made part of the formal record for the hearing. With that, the committee now stands adjourned.